see me?
Tracy is in the office at City Hall, yeah. Hi, Molly. If all of the panelists would mute themselves until it's time to speak, that would really help in the echo effect that we get and things that are going on in the background. But otherwise, 3, 4, 5. Why am I? Oh, and James, you're going to be on voice.
I'm trying.
So all the council members are here. Council member Blair is on audio only. Everybody else, should be able to see each other, and you should be able to see your handouts if you'd like to pull those up, but they'll also be put up for viewing. So we'll call the meeting to order. I believe everybody's in their places. And I just want to start us off tonight by saying that we are here tonight courtesy of the combined leadership of the executive and legislative branches of the state of Washington government, who extended the exemptions to the OPMA so that we could hold virtual meetings. Otherwise, it would have been a conflict with the stay home order. So we appreciate that. It's been extended to June 17th, and we'll wait for further clarification from the state on what our next meetings will look like after that. And I also just want to say that we're here tonight living in a community where we can all feel safe. And I suggest that we all take a collective breath in honor of George Floyd and all of those who struggle to live safely in their communities. And I appreciate what we have here in Yelm, and I appreciate our law enforcement officers for keeping our community safe. So with that said, we have taken the roll, and we'll launch right into the CARES Act discussion. So Michael Graham, do you have an overview of what we've talked about as a management team to share with council? Well, actually, I'm not seeing Michael on here.
Michael is on. I just sent him a panelist request. And he is sharing his screen.
Yeah, I see it now. Yes.
Can you see the spreadsheet? No, I'm off mute. Can you guys see the spreadsheet?
No, what I see is I see Grant Beck's go to webinar. There we go.
Okay.
Now your spreadsheet's up. Thank you. Can you make it? There you go.
So what I wanted to do, council, is just follow up on the conversations that we've been having with the CARES Act. As you know, the federal government appropriated funds for that's available for local governments. The governor authorized the Department of Commerce, to disperse these funds. And the total funds based on our allocation is $274,050. So just as background, you can see there, we were notified on the 20th that they have released a portion of those funds that are available, and they sent us the paperwork and criteria that I forwarded on to all of you. We have submitted the required pre-contract paperwork to the Department of Commerce, and I followed up with them last week and then again today, and they did confirm they've received everything. They're processing all of our information, and they'll send out a contract here shortly. In the meantime, just like I asked all of you in an email and at council meetings, just start thinking about how we could utilize these funds. We got a couple, I think Councilmember DePino submitted 3 ideas. Councilmember Carmody had a similar idea and let us know that. And so what we did here is we met together as a management team, and we brainstormed all the possible uses that would be consistent with the CARES Act. We summarized them, met as a management team, then we met with the General Government Committee, got their feedback, and now we're here tonight to share these collective ideas with you and the recommendation from the General Government Committee on the path forward in probably the most simplified, streamlined, and expeditious way possible, so we can get this money out to the community, which was one of the primary intents of this from the conversations that have been had so far. So the most important thing to note is that there's a handful of categories. They have 6 categories, and really these funds can be used for anything practically that are COVID related that are not budgeted. And I won't rehash all the information in the documents that you were sent earlier, but I'll just scroll down to give you an idea of what were some of the internal costs and expenses and investments that we have made or will be making going forward as it relates to COVID, everything from payroll and expenses and to sick leave, to remote working technologies, web cameras. Cody Colt even revisited the JCI contract, and one of the things that was proposed and recommended was the water, the basically new urinals, faucets, the HVAC system that is better than ours and deals with things at the bacterial and microbial level, things that we'll need to purchase for the court, etc. So these are all internal costs and investments. And then just continuing to scroll down here, these are the ideas that were submitted, and I'll send this out to you all tonight after we're done, just so you have the complete list. But what I did is summarize the information that we received. This one is from Councilmember DePinto. He mentioned this at the last council meeting, modeled after what the city of Camas does, where you essentially make a purchase and then you show proof of that purchase and you get some money back. Scroll on here. The other one that he talked about was the expansion of the current utility program, providing businesses with hand sanitizer. This is something that Councilmember DePinto and Councilmember Carmody talked about. Provide printing services like the city copier to print out menus for restaurants was another idea that Councilmember DePinto had. And then other ideas that we looked at as a management team and the mayor was, continuing to support together to provide relief for residents. You have the Rotary Club, the Yelm Community Food Bank, Senior Center, and as we talked about this with the General Government Committee, we basically teed all these up and said, guys, what do you think? And the way the General Government Committee looked at it was essentially to look at this in 3 buckets. And when you total everything together, there's 3 general categories based on the feedback from the management team and the mayor and the General Government Committee. And that's first, let's pay ourselves first. Basic business principle. We have funds that we have expended. We know things are going to be tight. We need to utilize these funds to reimburse or cover those costs. And so that just makes good sense. However, we also have a great opportunity to go forward and put this money out into the community. And so what we looked at was a formula, and Cody's on here so he can check the numbers and probably get them more precise than I have them dialed in. But the aspect of split the fund 50-50 and have that go to cover the internal unanticipated costs so we can reopen City Hall, court, and other facilities. Then looking at 2 opportunities to push these out into the community. One would be to fund the Yelm Community Relief Fund, which, as you know, you've got the local bank, you have Together, you have Rotary Summer Feeding Program. It's open to everyone to apply. We can just infuse a significant portion of money into that, which would be available to everyone else in the city to apply for. And then the other thing that really gravitated was, let's do what we can to support local businesses. And in doing so, let's focus on a real simple application and process. Are they located in the city? Can they demonstrate a hardship or loss? Or can they demonstrate a cost to reopen? And then something that the General Government Committee really emphasized was, let's really focus on, obviously we want to support and make this available to all businesses that are impacts, but they also put a finer point on giving priority to those that couldn't bring in any revenue. And they gave several examples there, knowing that several of you as business owners could still conduct your business in different ways. Some of these businesses in our community, they were completely hamstrung, and want to make sure that we give some deference to them. So we're still waiting to hear back from the Department of Commerce, and really this is a study session. There's no need for action at all on this. But what we wanted to do is essentially bring this forward to you as a recommendation from the General Government Committee, and just get a nod and a thumbs up of your guidance for us to allocate these funds in some similar format for those general buckets. And so with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions. And then Councilmember DePinto and Carmody, you may want to expand on some of the ideas that you had and contributed as well. I don't know who had their hand up first, Councilmember DePinto or Carmody.
I think I had it up. I appreciate what the General Government Committee and their recommendations on this are, but am I accurate to point out that it's just two members, Councilmember Stillwell and Wood, on that General Government Committee? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a little disappointed we haven't got these ideas, and I appreciate you putting it together, but the transparency in this process, in my opinion, it hasn't been there. I've been asking for these documents, these ideas for a long time now. I threw out my idea about the Shop Local and Save program, got business buy-in on this, publicly talked about it. I haven't heard any of these ideas. I've asked for these documents. Last week I asked, hey, knowing that this is going to be on the study session, can we at least take a look at these ahead of time? Could you send out these documents, some of these ideas? And I was told that, yeah, if there's any documentations that we can send out prior to the meeting, we will send it out. Got nothing. And now it looks like we already have a policy recommendation that's already hashed out, at least from the General Government Committee, between Councilmembers Stillwell and Wood, without any input at all from the rest of the City Council. And I appreciate you're doing it now, but it looks like it's just all teed up, ready to go without, I would rather have seen no recommendations on there and let us talk about it in depth about each of these programs tonight, which was what I thought we were going to do. So just starting off that way, I'm a little disappointed in that, in the transparency in the process. Secondly, do we even have $300K to front load these programs? Because we're gonna have to support these programs out of our own pocket and then being reimbursed by it. So I want to first know that we do have close to $300,000 in reserves that we could spend on these.
You want me to respond to the transparency first or the financial aspect first?
Dealer's choice, whichever.
First of all, we do have the money, and that's why we're even able to have this conversation. But we have to be judicious of where it comes from, and then make sure that we get that funding back from Commerce expeditiously. Which is why, if you look back at the time frame, it's great that you've been asking for this for a long time, but we needed to get the clear guidance from Commerce on what it is. And as soon as that happened, we sent out emails to all of you with that exact guidance. We started the conversation as a management team. We shared it with the General Government Committee and kicked it around. We had another management team meeting to talk about these ideas and these numbers further, and then went back to the General Government Committee again today to tee it up for council for a conversation. And rather than just throwing out a jump ball, we are looking at this from a perspective of what are recommendations from staff, what's the input from the mayor, what's the input from the committee, and then what's the input from the whole council. So you can talk about transparency all you want, but that's the process that you all talked about and agreed to. And this is the recommendation of the General Government Committee for the council's consideration. And now it's the council's opportunity to kick this around and hash it out. But at least, I think it's disrespectful to Councilmember Stillwell and Councilmember Wood that put the time and energy into brainstorming and thinking these things, just like you did, giving them deference and trying to figure out, look at all these great ideas that we have. What's the quickest way that we can get these funds out? And this is their recommendation for council to discuss and decide on. And now is the time to have that conversation, knowing that we still don't have a contract from the Department of Commerce, that's still waiting for them to sign, of which that's the trigger for us to get reimbursed for those funds.
Sure, but the difference was I went through the process. They did not. I submitted these documents as per our guidance to subcommittees, to the general government committee and the rest of the council, to let them know, the rest of the council to know what their ideas were. Were these submitted through the same process as I did? And I apologize if they were. I didn't see any of those.
Let me pull up the document again so we can read it.
No, I
Here's-
see that, but my point is, you know, that when you submit it to a certain committee, whether it be general government, whether it be public safety, we have to have a list of all the different aspects of that, fiscal cost, the background of it and all that. I was wondering, were those filled out by that committee?
Go ahead, Tad.
No, I think what you're missing or you're forgetting from previous updates from these council members is, you know, they said they acknowledged the receipt of those ideas. They also acknowledged the understanding that the guidance was coming out from Commerce, and Councilmember Stillwell and or Wood said at the last meeting, probably Stillwell, no offense, Tracy, you probably weren't there, we're just phoning in, but we love you. But there was feedback given that we were going to take all of these recommendations and ideas and look at them comprehensively rather than in a piecemeal fashion. That's exactly what they did. And we looked at a comprehensive spreadsheet, which includes every idea that was thrown out from, again, the staff and yourself and others. And then you have a recommendation from the council committee or from the general government committee to have this conversation right now. So we can talk about how we got here, or we can spend our time focused on looking at all the suite of options and what the recommendation is and how to go forward. Councilmember Carmody.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. I appreciate what the finance committee did, and I really don't think that it's super important that we just. I mean, sure, it's important that we discuss how we got to this point, or why we got to this point, or the process itself. That doesn't matter. We're here now. We can discuss it now. I think, arguing over the process and how we got here is, I mean, it's not germane, At any rate, I'd like to actually see some more. I really appreciate the general government's recommendation. I think it sounds like a good idea. I'd also like to see if we could look into some sort of a general payment to specifically parents who've had to pay for a lot of childcare. I know that this is, it's really hard for parents right now to get childcare, pay for childcare. If we could, and I know that I didn't go through the system like Joe wanted me to here, but I'm spitballing, and that's what this meeting is for. Parents having to find childcare right now is critically overwhelmed. And if we could get parents to apply for this thing and say, hey man, we're overwhelmed with these costs, that might help. In addition to the business applications, just a thought.
So I'm going to jump in here and kind of bring us back around to where we need to be with this. What Michael Graham has explained is all very proper. Remember that the CARES Act 2 money was generated for the municipalities at the request of the states and municipalities to say, hey, nothing in the CARES Act has been given to municipalities to pay for the impacts that we have suffered as a small business. The monies went to businesses, they went to individuals with stipends. CARES Act 2 was designed specifically to come out to help municipalities with these costs. The guidelines have been very helpful in allowing us to apply. We could spend the whole $274,000 easily on the costs that the city of Yelm has incurred to replenish those taxpayers' dollars that are being spent on these things, both in the shutdown and in the reopening, just like any business. That's what the money was there for. But they also said you can use it to support your community, which they understand and we understand is this circular economy. So to create these nice programs that would work on each individual aspect of it. So childcare is absolutely important, and people being able to pay their bills is equally as important. And you could make a laundry list that is unending. But what the general thinking on this is that if we take a reasonable amount to buffer the city against the impending loss of revenues to pay for those things that we need to do to keep our services going. And we take the other bucket and we support our local businesses with grant programs, and they can use that money for whatever they think they need to use it on. If they need to put up spit shields or do printing for their menus or provide PPE for their employees, whatever it is, we don't have to be the quartermaster and try to provide these things for each one of those businesses. They can spend it best in that way. And a very easy format, to even easier than the one Lacey put together for their grant program, that would allow these businesses to demonstrate impact, how they're going to spend their money in a general sense, and we can write them a check, boom, out the door. And then thirdly, to answer Molly's question about individuals with their problems, that's why we got the Community Relief Fund started in the first place. It's an organization that we don't have to staff. We don't have the capacity to staff a program like that. That group has already been doing eviction prevention programs. They take the money in from the foundation and they dole it right out to people to pay their bills. In fact, what they do is pay their bills for them. So be it childcare or their utility bill or their electricity bill or even their rent or even their groceries, the volunteers over there at Together are vetting those applications and putting money in the right places right away. So that's why the government committee and management team recommended these three buckets: pay the city back for its expenses, pay our businesses with grants that are easy to apply for and they can spend the money as they see fit, and then support local support organizations that can reach out to each individual or can apply, individuals can apply for and get relief from where they need it. That's the basis of what we're asking people to talk about tonight. And we're going to go down the line. I haven't heard from Councilmember Kaminsky. We'll start with you and then Molly, then Tad.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask if any portion of this, even a small portion, would be appropriate to help Tad and I with our revitalization program for the businesses. Say we give them money for their actual businesses, but a small portion we could reserve and help them revitalize the front of their buildings. I'm just talking about maybe paint and a couple of flower pots, not a lot of money, but this would be a great way to revitalize and actually give us a little funds so that they don't have to buy their own paint. Would that be an appropriate request for our EDC project?
So I'll answer that in the same way, Terry, that if that business, with this very limited amount of money that we have, if let's say we have $100,000 to dole out to these businesses in $2,500 grants, which would be about right for the number of businesses we expect to apply for it, if they feel that beautifying the front of their building was the most important thing to their recovery, then they could spend it on that. But instead, they'll probably need to spend it on hand sanitizer and menus and spit shields and et cetera. And we could find a different pot of money to do the beautification program later on. This is something that we need to do to help them recover right now.
So I'm saying, like, if we have $100,000 pot, could we ask for $5,000, a small amount? So that could be done right away. So people don't have to worry that they can't do it and that we all do it together.
So when we look at justifying these expenditures to the Commerce Department, who's managing the funds, if we can demonstrate that these funds are being expended to support a business in recovery from the impact of them from the COVID-19 crisis, then they'll say that was a good expense and they'll reimburse us for the money that we've given out. I'm not sure that I would want to put down beautification of the buildings as a necessary expense for that recovery. I think we really want to be able to demonstrate that this was in direct response to COVID-19, which is loss of revenue from the shutdown or loss of revenue, expense of revenue to comply with the guidelines to reopen safely. So I'm not sure that that would fit. Molly, Councilmember Carmody?
Yeah, so thank you for putting up the yellow box there. I don't know why I was spacing. So I get that the childcare suggestion would go into the Yelm Community Relief Fund and the business grants would go to the business. So I totally get that. I'm totally fine with all of that. yay, A+, good to go. My only concern is that how do we know what the Yelm Community Relief Fund is basing its decisions on? I mean, I would hesitate to give this money to the relief fund only to find out that they're, God forbid, mismanaging or, you know, making some kind of discriminatory decisions or something like that. I really think that we need to be careful on how they are reporting and how they are making that decision. That's just a caveat. You know,
Well,
if we could get a copy of their process for the government, so that we can say to the government, look, we know that these guys are properly vetting these funds, that are properly vetting the applications. They're not just giving away money willy-nilly. We need to be able to show to the government that we trust this organization to make the right decision. So I think just to cover our bases, cross our T's, dot our I's, that we need to have that application process and the decision-making process documented for the government. But other than that, I agree with the general government's recommendations. So I'm okay with that.
Molly, let me address that, because indeed, when we set this organization up, the relief fund up, we wanted to use an organization that could answer those very questions that you're asking. So they are an existing organization. You can look at their application process. It's online for everybody to look at. Those questions are what they're using to bring people in. And then they ask for documentation of their need, and they document all that. We can even show you, without putting the names of the families associated with it, we can quickly tomorrow demonstrate to you exactly what checks have been written and for what and to whom. I know that the city of Yelm has received several of those checks for payment of utilities for people who have applied. And this organization together has been audited by the state auditor's office and come out with a clean audit for the last 10 years. So we have all of that documentation in place, and it's why we chose them to manage those funds in the first place. Very good question. Councilmember Stillwell?
Yeah, I think that, you know, for years, at least as long as I can remember, we've been, the assumption is that we're not supportive of small businesses. And this seemed like a really good opportunity. There was, I mean, obviously every idea in here was good, but it seemed like in talking about it, this was the best way to help businesses that need some help, just enough to get through. So while everything was good on there, but we only have so much money. So I think that as far as transparency, everything was considered. Nothing was left out. I'm not sure why. This is a great opportunity for us to discuss it. That's why I have study sessions. So I'm just really kind of confused at how this would be looked down on when we're trying to help businesses without strings attached. These are grants. There are people that are hurting that need some help. I think of the bowling alley. They employ 4 or 5, 6 people. They've had zero ability to earn income, zero. And they would be any of those businesses. And I'm not saying anybody on this, council is saying that it's not a good idea, but I think of these people who have zero opportunity to really get any help. And this is our chance to shine and use this money for what it's designed for and really help them out. That's all I got. Sorry.
Yeah. Councilmember Blair, I'll get back to you, Councilmember DePinto, but we want to make sure that all the council members have an opportunity to speak before we go back around the horn. Councilmember Blair, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one second. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I like it. Me personally, I would want to see the very minimal amount going to the city and the maximum amount going to help the community. Because even though I know this portion of it was specifically at the request of certain cities, but for me, I think if our businesses and our people are good and able to get through, that's going to in turn benefit us more in the end. But of course, there are the expenses we have up front. If we want to reimburse ourselves for that, I just think keep that to a minimum. On top of that, I like the idea of the grant style, as long as we find a way that makes sure we're not favoring anyone over someone else. And then in addition to that, I think it was Councilmember DePinto that brought it up about the local distillery for the hand sanitizer. Of course, the businesses could go and find that, but if we were to procure that as a bulk, we would get it at a better price than everyone trying to do it individually. So just something to think about that with that.
Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, as we talked about this and looked at it, I think what sounded the best about this was, you know, there's a lot of businesses in town that are hurting, you know, that took it in the shorts on this, you know, and fortunately, most of us are going to make it through and be okay, because there was a lot of opportunity that both the state and federal government were willing to help us out with. What we considered mainly, just to kind of go back on what Councilmember Stillwell was saying, is you know, places like the bowling alley or some of the bars or the hair cutting salons or the you know, the workout facilities, or you know, the yoga places. Some of these places, you know, those of us that have businesses that were able to at least continue enough to pay our mortgages and pay our bills, you know, are lucky. But these businesses were the ones we were focused on, were these businesses that, as Councilmember Stillwell said, they didn't have that opportunity. You know, and as a lot of business owners didn't have the opportunity to collect unemployment, because that's just how it works. But so I think that was kind of what we were looking at, is here's an opportunity for us to really, you know, help out some of these businesses that otherwise, as Councilmember, I believe DePinto was mentioning, you know, we need them, or excuse me, it was Councilmember Blair. We need these folks to succeed. These are, you know, these aren't just part of our community. It's just, you know, these people are, you know, they need our help, and here's a chance to help them. And I think that I'm pretty excited that we have this opportunity to do it.
All right, Councilmember DePinto, we're back to you.
Thank you, Mayor. And no, I agree. I think the business grants are great. I think that's definitely an option that I would support. But I just don't understand how they got to the point where we can't do both. I think that it's valid to give a blank check to businesses for whatever they need. I totally get that. My concern is why are we just arbitrarily getting up that amount? And perhaps the good council members from the General Government Committee can explain how they came up to that exact amount. And I realize that some of those businesses also, there's been a lot that have been shut down for a long time. You kept bringing up the bowling alley. They haven't got support. I thought that the bowling alley did get some money
Right.
from the, yeah, everyone's mentioned that they didn't get any, but I'm pretty sure, and not to say anything against the bowling alley, but I'm pretty sure they did get some grant money already too. But
Yep.
I was
I
curious.
use that as an example.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Hold on, Ted.
So my question then to the General Government Committee is, one, how'd you came up with that amount for business grants, which I love, I think we should, but, and then what did you not like or criticisms regarding the Shop Local and Save program?
Well, I'm going to actually answer for them on this, and they can agree or disagree with it, but nice eye roll, Joe. I appreciate the respect on that. Thank you
Because
so much.
I asked specifically for those council members. With all due respect, Mayor, this is a council member study session.
I'm going to sum this up for them, and if they would like to agree or disagree and say something different, that they certainly can, but I appreciate that respectful eye roll. So the numbers are arbitrary and were brought forward to council tonight for discussion and movement of those numbers. I heard from Councilmember Blair that he'd like to see more money put towards the business grants than to be spent internally. Wonderful. Let's have some consensus on that, and we can move forward with this program. The problem with some of the programs, and I'll just say it, like the one that you're suggesting, Joe, about that mimics the CAMS program, is that we in the city, the team in the city doesn't have the capacity to manage a program like that. And the second part of it is that a person who doesn't have the money to pay their utility bill doesn't have the money to spend it locally to get a credit on the utility bill they still can't fully pay. So they can apply for an opportunity to have their utility bill paid for them, and we don't incur any further work as a city. Sometimes the feel good doesn't do good. And we just need to make sure that the city can monitor and manage these. I know my finance team can easily vet these applications coming in for the businesses, because they'll be just a blank. If they apply, if they're approved because they're a city business and they've shown impact, they will all get the same check. And they can spend it the way they want. So please, Tad or Tracy, if you'd like to join in on that, I'll go first with Tad and then with Tracy.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, Joe. I mean, I use the bowling alley because it was just something I drive by every day. I have no idea. I don't know those people. I don't pretend to know them. I just use that. I could have used Salon Nouveau, any other business. So I appreciate you pointing out that they may have got money or they did get money. I don't know that. So you must know better than me. But anyhow, the division of the money was a simple 80-20 split. So we could get the 20% over to the relief fund. It was just math. It was easier to do the math. It could be 35, 70, whatever we agree on. It was just simply a 80-20 feeling that the biggest bang for the buck would be for the local business owners. And you're right. We don't know who got what. Like, I lost a bunch of money. I didn't apply for money, but I wouldn't apply for a grant. So I think we have a lot of business owners that wouldn't apply and some that really should, but that's out of our control. So that was how we kind of came to that. And certainly that's why we're here at a study session to say, you might say, hey, let's do 10% of that and 20% of that. That's what we do, right? So that's all I got to say on that.
Councilmember Wood and then Councilmember Carmody's hand was up.
I actually agree with the way you laid that out, Mr. Mayor. It was something that came up in our discussions, is just exactly that. If they're having trouble paying their utility bill, offering them a bonus in the business community, I just personally didn't see it as a really feasible program.
Councilmember Carmody.
Yeah, can Michael stop flipping around on his computer there? Can we just see that yellow box of recommendations again? He just keeps moving his things. Thank you very much. I'm okay with these numbers. I mean, the 80-20 seems like, it seems reasonable to me. I appreciate what the General Government Committee did. Thank you, guys. I'm okay with these numbers.
Councilmember DePino.
Thank you, Mayor. And my apologies for rolling my eyes. That was a little disrespectful to your response. But if you can understand where my perspective is, I'd really appreciate that too. That when I asked for the General Government's committees, their opinions on this, I wanted their opinion. I didn't want you to tee it up for them and then them to say, you did a good job on that. I wanted to hear it directly. And I appreciate Councilmember Stillwell for expanding on it, the 80-20 split. That's what I wanted to know. So I appreciate that. Thank you. And I wasn't calling out the bowling alley. I do believe we all got that same email though that shared those numbers. But the only point that I wanted to hear from Councilmember Stillwell and Wood from their council position, not the executive position. And I get that. I appreciate it, Mayor, but I just wanted to hear from them as my peers on the council. That being said, and I did after you teed it up for them. But my point is, I do like the business seeds grants. I think that is one that I 100% support. I think the businesses need money, and with less restrictions on how to spend it, I really think that's a great idea. I also would like to see the hand sanitizer program. I don't believe this is going to be a difficult program to administer, especially on the executive branch's portion of it. When I was talking to the owner of the Sandstone Distillery, she was telling me how what we could do is purchase a barrel or have one. And I'd be happy to acquire one or buy one if that's what's needed to do it. But just buy a barrel and fill that up with hand sanitizer and from Sandstone Distillery, and have the businesses that need it to come there at a central location, perhaps at Public Works, and pump it out, fill up their needs, and then take off. So I don't think it would be a very complicated thing. If they're a business, come to the Public Works building, grab some hand sanitizer, and help them with that cost. So that was my only concern with that. Thank you.
I think that's a great idea. And without even having to use the COVID, the CARES Act money, you buy a barrel, I'll buy a barrel. We'll put it out there at Public Works with a tap on it, and they can come out and fill up their jugs as needed. I think it's a great idea. And it's really good sanitizer too. I believe Councilmember Kaminsky's been waiting very patiently to add something in.
I think I lost all my steam, but I just want to say, I think everybody's overlooking this chance. Tad, support me please with the EDC, this chance to do a group simultaneous revitalization, because the way we support our businesses is to shop local, and people see something different going on and some activity, they're going to go there. And if you want to use the bowling alley as an example, he tried to make a nice patio with furniture. It attracts people to come in. All the furniture is tilted and leaning on the sidewalk. What about if we went to him and said, hey, we've got some wood, let's make a beautiful deck, let's improve the look of this, and more people will come to your business. But if you give them all the money up front, they're going to say, no, we have no money. I'm asking for a reserve of that money that goes to them, where we could say, hey, bonus, look what we're going to do. This is a group revitalization. And the last point is the people that will be doing the revitalization are people that are local businesses too. We have local painters, local renovators, local whatever. So I just feel really passionate about it, obviously.
Comment.
Directly. I'm going to go to Molly first, and then I think I heard James in the background. Go ahead, Molly.
So Terry, I really applaud your vision on this. I think it's a great idea, but the government has very specifically stated that it must be COVID related. Revitalization is not COVID related. It's beautification. Okay. And I get it. I think it's a great idea. And I would love for a small portion of that money to go to revitalization and beautification, but that's not what this is for. This is for specifically for businesses
Reopening of the
be able to fund themselves through the emergency. Okay.
Well, that was my first
Beautification is not an
question.
emergency, Terry.
That's what my first question was to Michael. Is this an appropriate part of it? And
Right. And the
Mayor Foster, you said we could get funds somewhere else. Is there any place anybody can get any money for this project?
Not from this fund.
Okay, that was my first question.
Thank you.
I'll respond to Terry's question is that I actually had a really nice chat today with Michael Cade from the Thurston Economic Development Council. And they have made a list of what they feel, and Thurston County Chamber and others feel are the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 priorities on helping businesses get back on their feet and recover. Unfortunately, beautification was not on that top 5 list. There was a lot of other stuff. However, moving forward, they do appreciate that, and they will be looking for opportunities to provide support for businesses to do exactly what you're talking about. And it does dovetail nicely into our Yelm Corridor plan, which talks about, improving the sidewalks and pedestrian and vehicular mobility. All ties together with making downtown Yelm more beautiful, more attractive to people, so they'll get out of their cars and spend money. So we're all with you on that. It's just, like Molly said, it's not the time for this particular expense from this particular pot of money. I believe we have Council Member Blair in the wings.
Yeah, I think Molly pretty much hit it. I just was gonna reiterate, I know Councilmember Kaminsky asked the question originally, and perhaps she didn't get the answer as direct, but I believe Mayor Foster did mention that funds being used for that purpose would likely not be approved for reimbursement. So just to keep, and then since Michael has this slide up, I noticed number 3. I just wanted to make a comment on that real quick. This says the expense is not filling a shortfall in government revenues, but it sounds like we were talking about the money to the city being used in anticipation of that possibly. Is that is that more of a gray area right there that we're talking about? Because I wouldn't want it to get declined. You know what I mean?
It's
No, there's no gray area. It's black and white. You can't use it for expenses that have been budgeted or expenses that your revenues that you budgeted that you're not expecting to come in. This is for things specifically like, the employees that were deemed essential that were working overtime. We can get reimbursed for those funds. There's certain healthcare medical expenses qualifications that can be reimbursed. The spit guard that Cody Colt is ordering for the customer service front counter, so that we have protection just like we do at the public safety building and the courtroom here at City Hall. Those type of investments that are not planned, not budgeted, but necessary for public health and public safety and employee safety and payroll for expenses that were not budgeted, but that were utilized for the COVID emergency.
Okay, thank you for that. The thing that I would say is, as far as the chunk of money that we're thinking of setting aside for internal expenses, me personally, I would want to see a very detailed layout of all of that by line item, straight up. And then whatever is left after that is what we would then push into these other programs we're talking about. Like I said earlier, when it comes to the hand sanitizer, I would take that portion out of whatever we're talking about putting into the business grant program and just purchase a large bulk amount of it and distribute that out, or like Joe said, allow people to, if we have just a big jug of it, allow people, the businesses, to come fill it as they need. Only because I think if we get it in a large amount at one time, it'll be cheaper and that money will go further than each individual business going out and buying a smaller amount at a time.
Yeah, good point. To answer your first question or comment, though, I have to tell you, our management team did a fantastic job when we tasked them with line iteming out the costs to their department, to the city, on our response and our reopening. The total amount was like several $100,000. It was all of it. And we went back to them this morning and said, no, we can't do that. We don't think it's a good idea to use more than half of it for internal costs, because we need to demonstrate to the community that we're supporting that economy, which then in turn provides us with the revenue that we need to continue those services. And that was guidance well taken by the management team and echoed by the government committee, that we need to demonstrate that we're spending the money equitably throughout our community, not just on city services. Does that help you with that, Jane?
Yeah.
Okay.
The other thing, just to piggyback on that, every one of these ideas that was submitted was impressive. The management team was impressed by obviously the ideas that we came up with. The general government committee was impressed by all the ideas that council submitted and the management team came up with. And I just want to reiterate a fine point that instead of focusing on the minutia of specific proposals, as great as they may be, one of the things that that Councilmember Stillwell and Councilmember Wood talked about was, let's just create a big pot that anyone can go and apply for. So for example, there's eligibility cost test. If someone feels that there is something that is related to their business that has directly related to COVID, they could do that. Or if a business wanted to go, is out of hand sanitizer and wanted to buy more, they could apply and facilitate that, either for themselves or for others. And so these criteria that are come up with are very minimal, and the goal is just to get it out to the community for whatever the community needs are, and get it out to the businesses for whatever those needs are, which cover the broad range of all the ideas that a lot of you came up with individually. But it's just empowering the businesses and the community to come up with those, submit their requests and get the funds, and move out and make an investment in themselves and their community.
Okay, so Councilmember Pino.
Thank you. May I suggest that when we do vote upon these things, these items at our city council meeting next week, if we could get these by line item rather than as a package. And if they don't get a second, then they obviously die. But I would feel more comfortable by voting on these line item by line item, program by program. There's not that many. And that way, you know, I'd be afraid to vote against the package itself for one item on there when the majority of it is what I like. And the majority of these things I do like. I mean, especially the business grants, I think that making it easy for businesses to go ahead and spend this money as they need, as they please, is great. I think that's a smart option, easy for those businesses. But I also would like to see some of these items discussed further more formally and voted upon formally as well.
Well, and just to be clear about the recommendation, it's not to get into the minutia of each line item or each proposal, but the recommendation from the General Government Committee was, and again, this doesn't require a vote. This is more getting guidance and direction as we get this contract, get these funds, and then get reimbursed, that we essentially allocate, in looking for more of a thumbs up and a heads nod to allocate a proportion, half of it to reimburse the city costs, and the 80-20, as Councilmember Wood talked about, and Stillwell talked about, for the community relief fund and the business needs grants, and to leave it broad so that those businesses and community organizations can apply. And so we can start moving on this now and create this program, and it doesn't require a vote unless council would like to go through and vote on. I think looking at the spreadsheet, it looks like there's 56 proposals on there. That's not needed, at least for you to vote on the things that we would need reimbursement for from the city. As the mayor said, that number far exceeds even the funds that are available. So it's just about filling out the form, totaling to whatever portion that you know everybody lands the plane on. Right now, it's that 50%. We fill it out, we send it into the commerce, and they cut us a check. Same thing with the community split and the business funds.
Councilmember DePinto?
Thank you. So just to be clear, Michael, you're telling me we don't have to vote upon any of these for spending over $100,000? You can just, the executive branch can just spend this however they feel like?
No, it's not the executive branch that can just do this however they want. That's why we're having this conversation together as a team. And the guidance from Commerce is you can do whatever you feel is appropriate. And so this, again, is part of the conversation. It could literally be a head nod of, okay, we're going to allocate business, community, internal, fill out the form, get the money, and get it out into the community. It could literally be that simple.
Sure, I know, I get that, but you're saying that you don't need any approval. I get the head nods and all that, but just to be clear, we don't need a vote on these programs. Is that accurate or not accurate?
Yes, the Commerce has said it's up to the discretion of each local government.
Again, I get that.
So no,
So
we
no.
don't need to have a vote.
Thank you.
And,
That's
and
what
let
I
me,
needed. Thank you.
but I do want to explain, Molly, I'll be right with you. I'm sorry, because one of the reasons that I didn't declare an emergency from the very beginning on this, because the only thing that declaring an emergency would have given me as mayor of Yelm is this unilateral ability to spend money in response to the emergency. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to make sure that I had involvement of the council and have consensus of the council on the expenditures of any funds that was in response to this, which is why we're here tonight. Now, but ultimately Commerce has given us that very unclear direction, but that just says, go through the process you want. Now, previously, some have complained that we're not, well, Joe, you complained that we haven't been spending the money yet, that it should have been spent long ago. We're ready to spend the money tomorrow. If we can get some consensus from the council that this general distribution into these funds is the right way to go. And if you want to kick it down to another city council meeting and take line by line item, that's a process that we could entertain, but we don't think that it's necessary. So Councilmember Carmody?
Yeah, I think that it probably would be wise for us to vote on a general package, just that 3-line item package, X percentage to businesses, X percentage to the government, and X percentage to individuals. because we need some accountability on the council side. So I do not agree with Joe that we should line item this thing. That's a pain in the ass. I want to vote on these 3 items and say that council approves these 3 items to be dispersed as this says. I think we do need to vote on that because it is an expenditure of city money. Whether or not we're getting refunded by the government, it's still spending city money in advance of getting that reimbursement.
James or Tracy off camera, you want to jump in?
I agree with Molly.
Okay, James?
Yeah, I'm the same. The only thing is I just want to have further, like as far as the percentages and kind of hash that out real quick. Other than right above the yellow, could someone explain? It says something about create a program for business completely shut down. Is that something separate, or are those like within the numbers that are in the yellow?
That's within the numbers that are in the yellow. So, you know, move the scale back and forth, which, go ahead, Tad.
So if we're going to talk about percentages, let's do that here. That's why we're in the study session. So let's not push this off. I know we can't vote, but we can. I know Joe has some ideas, and James, I think you must have some too. So let's get this nailed down or close to what we think, so that we can shorten meetings later and get this kind of moving forward.
Well, I thought you were going to go in a different direction, Tad. I just wanted to make sure that James got his answer on that. Is that that the yellow box, James, kind of pulls all of those other ideas down into those 3 buckets. Does that make sense?
Okay, got it.
So if the council would like to slide the scale back and forth a little bit and do, you know, less money for the city expenses, more money for the 2 public funds, that's fine. You know, kind of give us an idea what you want, and to satisfy that that need to have a vote on this, we can certainly wait until the 9th to do this and bring forward to the council those things that you've asked for. There would be, you could anticipate something that looks exactly like this with the numbers, whichever, you know, way you want to make them, and you can vote on that as a package, or you can beat it up in discussion and try to pull things out and add things in. In the meantime, we will have the application put together for the businesses. So once that decision is made on the 9th, we could launch it the very next day. We are still just a little bit ahead of Commerce's timeline, but we feel very comfortable. In answer to Joe's question, do we have the money to front load this? We do, if we have a high level of confidence that the monies will be reimbursed by Commerce, and we're getting more and more confident of that if we go by their guidelines. So we can certainly have that ready for next council meeting. And if you want, you can even wait until that meeting to move these numbers around in these different buckets, or you can just give a consensus now what you'd like to see, and we can make it look like that for next Tuesday.
It would be easier to have council do the sausage making now on the percentages, so that we can have that resolution drafted up and ready to go in their packet for them to take action on.
So James, give us a suggestion of how you would like to change that.
Okay, so for instance, not too crazy off of there. So the business, I'm real quick, Joe, if you wouldn't mind answering this, did you happen to get a price on the bulk hand sanitizer?
Yeah, it was $33, which is at cost per gallon from Samsung.
Okay. So 33, 36.
Yeah,
It's like
I've seen
nothing.
where you're going with it. I'd like to spend a few $1,000s at least on a hand sanitizers myself, if that's where you're going.
Where I'm going at, I'd say make that what I'm thinking in my head right now, the business needs one. If we just made that an even 1,000, and that difference we spent on, say, hand sanitizer and dispensers, and made that available straight to the businesses. And then for the community relief fund, I'm thinking bump that closer to 60, so it's 160 total to the public, and then the remainder would be with the city's internal costs. And just because the way I'm looking at it, even for the community relief fund, say we had 60 families apply at that point, then that's $1,000 each. Even that's not very much, but the more, in my opinion, the more of it that goes to the businesses and the people, the better off it is for us in the end.
Well, if you want it to go more to the individuals, then you juice up the community relief fund. If you want it to go to more of the businesses and the employees that they would support, right? Obviously, it's the business need grants. Are you saying create a specific line item for hand sanitizer, or I didn't understand that last part of $1,000 for hand sanitizer?
So what was previously talked about, so Joe spoke with that distillery, and if we buy it in bulk, it's a lot cheaper than individual businesses going and buying in smaller amounts. So instead of, if we just buy a bunch of that together and say, hey, and tell all the businesses ahead of time, like, if you need the hand sanitizer, it's already here, we got it. So that money goes further, and then they have more, they would then have access to more money for more general operational costs or whatever related to the COVID-19 stuff. Other than that, just a little more going towards the community relief fund. And just, but like Molly said, make sure we examine the parameters that they're going for and making sure that that's going to help out the people the most.
Yeah, so James, what we can do is take, we could spend $1,000 easily on the hand sanitizer as a line item of the city expenses, because it doesn't matter which bucket we put it into, it's still a reimbursable expense. And we're using that to assist our community businesses in getting back into business. So that's easily done. It would just go under the city reimbursement rather than a separate line item.
That's fine with, as long as it's there, like I said, and because I just think buying it all at once will make it go further.
I'll call John Borden up tomorrow and put the order in, and we'll, if you think that 100 gallons, I mean, how many gallons should we want? If it's $33 a gallon, 10 gallons is $330.
I think 100 is plenty.
100 gallons?
Yeah.
That's 3,000.
And then other than that, if we could try to maybe look into how to procure the little dispensers, because I know a couple of the business owners, they said they were having trouble finding those. Maybe if we could find how to find some of those, but that's outside of my realm.
We can certainly ask. I know 100 places where you're supposed to be able to get them. The problem is when you try to order them, they're gone. But you know what? I'll bet Johnny Edwards over at Public Works could build us a hand sanitizer dispenser, because that's the way he rolls. But we'll work on.
Business could apply for a business need grant to buy those hand sanitizer distribution things, or they could buy their own hand sanitizer for it as well. So
yeah, this is the microcosm of the national problem where people were trying to get ventilators and they couldn't because there was a short supply of them. In our little tiny world, this is a matter of the businesses can't find a source for those hand sanitizer dispensers. So I think the question is, if we could find a source for them that we could buy in larger numbers, that we could help provide them to our businesses. So we can certainly look into that in addition to getting the hand sanitizer as a city expense. And then we would stockpile those. But in general now, with those additions, James, did you, or any of the council, let's go to Molly, she hasn't spoken yet on this, and then to Tad, please.
Well, okay, I'm gonna be a negative Nelly here. So let's pretend we have these 55-gallon drums of sanitizer, right? That's a great idea. But what happens when all of the businesses from McKenna and Roy and Rainier and Tenino all figure out that Yelm has 55-gallon drums of hand sanitizer waiting to be tapped? I mean, are we gonna sit there and say, no, you're not in the city limits of Yelm, you can't have any hand sanitizer? Or are you going to say, well, you know what, we really have feelings for everybody in the community. Yeah, we're totally okay with people from Tenino taking all of our hand sanitizer. I mean, this is a stupid argument, you guys. Why don't we just keep with the money, give them the money, the $93,000 or however much we want to spend, but we're not in the business of dispensing hand sanitizer. You know, I mean, just silly.
Tracy Wood, then Tad, please. I think I put them out of order. Tracy?
You know, I'm just confused here. It just seems really unusual that we're having a conversation about hand sanitizer and its availability. You know, I go to cash and carry in Costco on the regular, have through this entire thing. And I can tell you right now, they've got, I was at the Costco in Tumwater, and they literally had a pallet full of hand sanitizer. And I can tell you that it's available, and as a business owner, it is not the number one thing I'm concerned about because the fact is, as I just mentioned, it is available. And I apologize that you guys are looking at a chair, but I'll be darned if I can figure out how to get this camera to turn around.
Tad, when you're done choking on your laugh there, jump there.
I thought you did that on purpose.
Thank you. I think that, I mean, in my opinion, and I think that we should stick with the money, because some of these businesses probably have already bought it. I think that it's going to be a pain in the ass to get somebody to, like Molly said, monitor it. And if we don't get rid of it, if they already have it, then we're stuck with 100 extra gallons of hand sanitizer. So I'd rather maybe lean that way, in my opinion, and just be done with this conversation.
We will.
That's fair.
Okay. Joe.
Thank you. I don't understand what's so difficult about this. If you're from Yelm, you're available. If you have a business in Yelm, you can go up and get some hand sanitizer. If you're from Roy, I'm sorry, ask for their program. If you're from Nino, ask for them for their program. I don't think we're gonna, require documentations. But if someone says they're from Yelm and they're a business, list their business, I mean, I think we can be pretty lax on this. It's not that big of an idea, but all right. Anyway, I'll just shut up now, though. You guys can continue on the meeting.
Does that mean we need contact tracing for the hand sanitizer?
Good one, Terry. Okay, folks, what I'm getting, and again, because we don't take votes and decide things at study sessions, we hoped for a robust discussion on this issue, and we got it. We have received the move forward consensus that you will see before you on the June 9th City Council meeting, a opportunity to vote on a package of relief money that we've demonstrated to you tonight in that fashion. And even then, if you want to move the numbers back and forth a little bit, you certainly can before voting it up or down. And in the meantime, we will be ready to go, and we actually hope to have received our final go ahead from Commerce that definitely lets us spend this money. And by the way, we do a monthly accounting with the Commerce Department, so we'll spend the money and we will do so judiciously and cautiously, and not all of it all at once. And we'll put our first test in with the Commerce Department and see if they reimburse us as promised, because as Councilmember Stillwell pointed out at a much earlier meeting, sometimes that money just goes away and we don't want to be left holding the empty bag. So unless there's final comments on this, or I've got this wrong, you could expect that at the council meeting, and we could move on to the next agenda item. Okay. I see a thumbs up from Tracy, literally. Okay, very good. So we'll move on to City Council Position 3 candidates discussion. This was very important to the council to maintain this discussion in a public setting. Of course, there's no action items at this meeting, but you did want to have an opportunity to discuss the qualifications in general on who you're looking for to fill that seat until November of 2021. So here's your opportunity to launch that discussion. Do understand that our attendee list includes a number of the candidates. So they're out there very interested in what you have to say about this. We'll start with Councilmember Carmody because her hand went up fast.
Okay, I wanted to say that I'd actually like to talk about not the candidates themselves, but how we choose them. I'm really kind of uncomfortable with that whole nomination process and then voting that person up or down and then going on to the next person, voting them up or down. I'd rather see just like an alphabetical vote, you know, so you have candidate A. Everybody who wants to see candidate A move forward, vote aye. And so you can vote for as many people as you want. Say there's 5 candidates, you could vote yes 5 times, but that would kind of defeat the purpose, right? So you would say you vote yes for 4 people and then 4 people move on. And then you have, you know, you could have a secondary runoff or a tertiary runoff, however you wanted to do it. But I think that just having this nomination for one person, it's like a race to the bottom. You know, I'd rather see, or we could do, you know, like dot voting. You know what I mean? Like a verbal dot vote. You can vote for as many people as you want, but you've just got to get it moving through, and then you could have a vote off of the final candidates. I don't know. I don't like the way that it's done right now, and we did a little research, and there's no specific rule as to how it's done. So I think maybe we should talk about changing that up a little bit. As far as the candidates go themselves, I think everybody's qualified. There's no, you know, everybody meets the qualifications, definitely. So let's talk about the process.
Let's not yet, because I made a mistake. I glanced over at my tiny little screen over here and saw that I skipped to item C rather than going to B. And Public Works Director Cody Colt is waiting patiently to present to us on the wastewater treatment facility funding. So to respect his time and that he won't have to stay for the rest of the meeting, yeah, Cody appears to be ready to go.
Yeah.
Do it, Cody.
Okay. Can you guys see everything okay?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. Obviously, everybody forgot about me. I've only been gone a month and you forgot about me already. So, so we're going to go over some funding options for WRF. We've talked a little bit about this in the Public Works Committee. And Joe and Molly were I told them to start brainstorming ideas for different funding options. So we're going to kind of go a little more in depth now, and then the Public Works Committee later on this month will actually look at numbers and specific rates so they can bring that back to the council as a whole. So I'm just going to go over some stuff, and feel free to stop me as we go. There will be a chance for questions at the end as well. So just a quick presentation outline so you know what I'm going to cover and how I'm going to cover it. That way you don't have to wonder if something's coming up next. First, we're going to cover background and facts, just kind of what we're looking at with the WRF, the history of it. I know you've had this 100 times, so I'll be really brief, and just some of the facts about what we know about the new WRF or what the new WRF will look like. We're going to cover current actions by staff and city council, the Public Works Committee, what we're doing to kind of alleviate the stress of the monetization of this, because it's a lot of money we're going to have to raise, a lot of money we're going to have to figure out where it's going to come from. So we're trying to take action now to get ahead of that game. Then we'll talk about alternative revenue sources, some things that you guys have mentioned as a council, some things that we have kind of brainstormed as a management team and as a Public Works group that we can kind of use to knock down some of those costs or provide more revenue for us. I'll have a quick example of what we can look at for rate structures coming up. These will be not exact percentages of what the rate structure will look like, but just kind of a model of what they could look like. And then next steps for you guys in the coming months. So background and facts, this is it's a hit you in the face slide. There's a lot of words here, so I'm just going to be really brief about this. We set up this kind of phase treatment plan. This was something we agreed on or the council agreed on and the city agreed on to kind of go through a phase plan where we have the immediate phase, the treatment process, and solids handling. Upon coming on as a Public Works Director and talking with a lot of the guys, it made sense to kind of meld phase 3 and phase 2 together. Instead of having them come at different times. We'll talk about what that means. City Council, we adopted the 2016 sewers facility plan, but we don't have the rates to kind of support what the facility plan was going to look like. So we've had to kind of modify that a little bit. We know that the cost of this new WRF will be somewhere around $25 million. That's the high end. And the reason I'm doing that is I don't want to say it's going to be 22 or 21 and it comes out as 23. 25 is the most it will cost. Ideally, we'll get a lower cost as time goes on and design goes on. We'll figure out exactly how much that will cost. So this is the very conservative estimate for the cost of it. We know that the enterprise funds for sewer are what pays for this essential infrastructure. So we're not allowed to pay for this with water rates and other things. We could loan ourselves money, but we can't physically pay for that without having to pay that money back at some point. And we've also expressed, council and staff has expressed a desire to pursue additional funding beyond just sewer rates. So we've looked at kind of grants, other things, loans that we could do. That's kind of just the backgrounds and facts to catch you guys back up and remind you of what we've kind of talked about before. So here's what we're doing, the current actions by staff and Public Works Committee to get us ahead of the game for this and that make those costs as minimal as possible. The biggest thing is performing preventative maintenance to increase cost savings. We spend a lot of money on corrective maintenance. So doing preventative maintenance on equipment and items to fix or prevent them from failing saves us a lot of money. That's one thing we've been doing. We're analyzing loan options. We know the revolving fund loan through Department of Ecology is probably one of the best rates we're going to get, which is a 20-year loan at 2%. It's very low interest and we qualify for it. And we've been assured by Department of Ecology that they can fully fund this in terms of a loan, fully fund in terms of a loan. And we're looking at grants we may be eligible for. One of those grants is the Centennial Clean Water Program. It's a $5 million grant that we can get if we qualify as a hardship, and our rates appear to be that way. We've had some pushback from Ecology, and me and the Public Works Committee will talk about that more, but we should be able to qualify for that $5 million grant, which should help. We're analyzing rate options provided by the FCS. This is that company that was brought on to analyze our rates and show what the rates would need to be in order to pay for a facility of this size. And also they're kind of helping us with that hardship component where we can demonstrate that we would have a hardship. Public Works Committee will go deeper into those rates during our committee meeting. And then the last thing, the really big thing that I'm pushing for and I think will help a lot is we're going to implement phase 3 simultaneously with phase 2 or even before. And the reasons being is phase 3 is the solids handling. Right now we're paying, we paid $239,000 last year to pump out our solid waste and take it to Shelton. You guys remember we were taking it to Tacoma. We had to switch it over to Shelton because of issues with Tacoma and them not taking our processing materials on the weekends. So we switched it to Shelton. So every month they come in and pump out all of our leftover matter from our reclaimed water, and then we take that to Shelton. We can do that ourselves, and then we can also provide a product to the city of Yelm. Maybe fertilizer, we can use that in our city parks. The schools could use that. Even individuals could use that as fertilizer if we could dry our own stuff. And that would save us $200,000 from having to pump it. So there's ways we can save money by implementing phase 3 ahead of time. So part of that. Alternate revenue sources. These are some things that the council has done, and this is going to be your big task, is trying to figure out and come up with more ideas. One thing I've heard several times from council is that donations or a checkbox on your monthly bill where someone could even donate more money, or they could give money to the WRF ahead of time if they maybe had extra money and felt willing to. I've heard council say they wanted something like that, so that's on here as an alternate revenue source. Another option I've heard a couple of council members say, I believe Blair and DePinto have said this, a surcharge that would go directly to WRF. So this wouldn't be a direct rate increase. It would be a line item that says, 15, this is just a number, it's not the actual number, $15 to WRF, and it would have an expiration date of 20 years or whatever the timeline is for that loan being paid off. State and federal grants. This is reaching out to our state and local legislatures to try to get money, even funds from the state in the next budget that they could give us to build this WRF and kind of help us with that. And I think the biggest thing is that when we looked at this, we didn't see COVID-19 happening. So the budget next year is going to be maybe a little more restrictive. So it might be harder to get an ask from the state, but we're still going to attempt to do that. And the last one is increased connection fees. This is something else other people have talked about and you guys have mentioned, is new developments coming in is increasing their connection fee. So right now they're paying around $6,500. If we increase that to a higher number to hook up to the sewer, that could be another way to offset the costs and not burden the current users of the system. This is just a possible rate example. This is not what the actual rates will look like, but just ways we can do the rates over time if we were just going to do a straight rate increase as the way to get this income. One is this initial burst where you have a high rate increase immediately, and then the rate increase gets slower over time until you don't need a rate increase because you're raising enough revenue that pay off that loan. The next one would be a rapid growth where you would have a very small increase in the first 5 years, then a larger increase in the next 5 years, and then a really large increase in the last years to pay off that loan. Another option is the even over time, where you just do a steady increase every year to kind of pay for it. And the last would be a big burst in the middle where the first 5 years you have a slow increase, then you have a big increase in the middle where everybody kind of pays a little bit more, and then you have a small increase in the end to kind of wrap up that loan. And this is it's just an example of what a rate increase could look like. These aren't the actual percentages on the left. These are just numbers to give you an idea of different ways the rate revenue could be done if we just went straight by a rate example. And these are the years for a 30-year loan, obviously, or a 20-year loan, sorry. And the kind of next steps for you guys or what council needs to do in this scenario is right now you're getting the study session presentation. Over the next 2 months, June, July, council should be brainstorming ideas about rates, things we can do if you come across a grant and you want us to apply for it, if you want us to talk to legislators, if you want anything, that's what you're going to be doing for the next 2 months is kind of brainstorming ideas. And then in August, we would have another study session where you guys would talk about those ideas and we could maybe narrow down to some actual things we can put on paper, some agreements about funding or how to do this, and we could write those down on paper, and then in October timeframe we could agree on what that path would be. So if we want to do a straight rate increase by October, we'd have that agreement that we would be doing that coming into the next budget cycle. And the reason we picked October for step 4 is because that's when the budget will be coming out, so we can get ahead of the game and not be panicking come next year when we're trying to vote on this in April and we didn't budget for it or didn't agree on what we were going to budget for it. So October would be agreeing on that path forward as a council, having a vote on some kind of rate structure coming into that next year or some kind of funding for that next year. And then step 5 in April would be begin construction, award that contract of this new WRF. Okay, try to keep it quick for you guys. Is there any questions you have? I know I kind of blared through it. If you need me to go back to a slide, just go ahead and ask.
Question.
Yes, Councilmember Blair.
Kind of a 2-part. The water account, is that still like pretty and far surplus?
What do you mean by pretty and far surplus?
I don't recall the exact numbers, so I don't want to throw out a number that I don't have in front of me. But I remember the water account had a significant amount in it that was pretty steady. What I'm thinking, is it possible that like we kind of shifted that, like you lower the water rate, raise the sewer rate, so more money is going to the sewer utility?
That would definitely be an option that council could do, and that's something to definitely look at, where you could do a model where the water rates maybe decrease and sewer rates increase. As long as we can budget for that, that would be something you could definitely look at as a council.
And then the other question I had, and thank you for including the little checkbox and surcharge ideas that we talked about previously. So that voluntary one where you would like check and say, hey, I want to toss in some extra money towards it. Are we able, like, say for the year that money kind of built up in its account, could you then take that at the end of the year and apply it straight to the principal balance on whatever loan that we do?
If council wanted that to happen, yes, that could totally be done. It could be done to pay off interest of the loan or straight to the loan or some combination of the two. That would be your decision. And yes, that could totally be done that way.
Cool, thanks.
Not a problem. Any other questions? I believe you're muted, JW. I can't hear you.
Thank you. That's a really good presentation. I appreciate you taking the time to put a PowerPoint presentation that was really easy to follow and helps us understand our next steps going forward. So we'll look forward to future presentations and, you know, get busy, find that grant, would you?
On it.
And happy 1 month anniversary.
Thank you very much.
I'm always right here in the background, Mr. Mayor.
I know you are, Grant. I get it. I see what you did there. Thanks. All right, now, looking carefully at the agenda, we're going to go back to the discussion where we left off at last episode was Councilmember Carmody would like to consider different ways of bringing this forward to council. And this, of course, is totally up to the council on how they want to proceed on this. And and I'll tell you that it's on the agenda as old business and will continue to be on the agenda as old business until the council makes a decision or doesn't, in which case we'd go to the next step in the process, which is to go up to the county commissioners. But I don't think you want to do that. So at the next council meeting, it'll be as on old business, and council can bring up motions in any which way you'd like to. So let's back up and go down the line like we're accustomed to doing on this virtual one. The subject is discussion of the qualifications of candidates for this council position. Councilmember DePino, do you want to kick us off with some discussion?
No, I'll reserve my time for the last if you don't mind.
Very
I'll wait
good.
for other discussion.
That's fine. Councilmember Carmody, you already had your turn. But we'll come back to you.
Comment.
Councilmember Blair, I should have started with you. I forgot you're in that seat.
Sorry, I didn't know. I think I interrupted you on accident also.
All right.
I just want to say I kind of like Molly's idea, actually. And if maybe there's the whole ranked choice voting model that maybe we could look into doing something like that. Basically, we have the list of all the candidates. Each one of us would then rank them on who would be our top choice, second, third, fourth, all the way down. And it kind of like a instant runoff kind of vote.
Okay. I'm just trying to make sure that we don't disobey the OPMA and we don't do some behind the scenes discussion about this, like I know that you're not doing. But if we were to send out to council a list of the candidates and you put them in your numerical order of ranking and then submitted them back to us, we could present that to you as a starting point for your conversation at the next council meeting. Is that kind of what you had in mind, Molly, James?
I think each of us could think about that individually leading up to the next council meeting, and then hand over our list, I guess, and then it could be tabulated right then and there.
Yep, certainly could. It would just take a minute to do that. Sure.
That works for me. I kind of like the ranked voting works. And and it's been shown to work in a lot of places. I'm okay with ranked voting. That's essentially the same thing as dot voting or, anything like that. I mean, because with dot voting, you're putting more dots on the candidate that you prefer over fewer dots on the candidates that you don't prefer. So ranked voting works for me. I just think it's more fair.
I think it also, it's a system where even if you don't get even if the candidate that won wasn't your top choice, at least it's a general concession or I'm tongue tied. I'm just going to skip that word right now. Consensus that, I mean, pretty much everyone agrees on the person that ends up winning it.
Yeah, that certainly fits And so that you could expect to see that at the council meeting then, as under your old business, you could ask for that to happen. We would have, I'll have to think about how to have you virtually bring this for compilation, but we'll noodle on that. I'm sure we can accomplish that. Good way to go forward. Okay,
I mean,
so
is everybody else okay with that? We've only heard from me and James. Tad, Terry, Joe, like
Molly,
what do you guys feel?
I'll work our way down the line and they can add their opinion to that at the end of it. I think we'll have consensus on that, but I'm just saying that's what we could do. Yeah, so thank you for that. So Tad, it's your turn.
Sorry, I had a kid choking on a Lego here. So I really missed, they're fine now, but I kind of missed the whole discussion. So I don't want to rehash it. I don't mind the way it was done before, but I'm not opposed to change. I didn't hear anything. So I apologize. So I'll listen to the rest of it and then I think I'll catch up.
All right, Councilmember Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that sounds fine. I certainly don't have any issue with it. I just, it doesn't change my perspective of how we're what we're looking at here. From the way I'm looking at this myself is we have a unique opportunity, and we have certain folks that know the job inside and out, and certain ones that are just coming into it. And I think it would be. I think we'd be sidestepping the community and their ability to elect who they want if these folks don't, they actually, as far as I'm aware, none of them have ever run for a spot at all. So it just seems like we have a unique opportunity, but I am certainly not opposed to the way Councilmember Carmody described moving forward. I'm certainly not opposed.
All right. Joe, you want to wait one more? You want go now or for Terry? Okay. Terry? Oh, no, good. Joe, go ahead.
Sure. No, I'm fine with that process.
Okay. Terry, what do you think?
I'm fine with it. I'm easy about it. But if we just each voted for one person, how would that work out? Then it would just be, so you're saying vote for 3, then we collect them and just whittle it down by then into one person that gets the most votes over 3 times. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, that will end up looking like, yeah.
Can I jump in on that one?
And then how would we do that virtually?
Well, I'm going to figure that out. It can be done.
When do we get to meet in person? Because I really miss you guys.
Well, not before June 17th, unless there's a sudden reversal of the governor's timeline for going into 3. But getting closer. James, you wanted to comment on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, Councilmember Kaminsky, the way it works is, so correct me if is it 6 candidates now? Or
yeah.
7?
Yes.
Okay. So the number of active candidates, basically you would go through and you would have you would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Number 1 would be your first choice, and then down the list, and each we all do the same thing, and if there's a process of how it's tabulated, and basically as each person is immediately eliminated, it kind of works itself out to where at the very end there's one person left over, and it kind of everyone has the same consensus of who to agree on.
Go ahead, Molly. And then Tracy.
So if you Google ranked voting online, there's actually an app for that. So we could just use the app and do the ranked voting. It's super duper easy. Just do it that way. And then, obviously we have to make we have to make the entire process as public as possible. I'm not sure how to do that part of it, but I mean, there is an app for online ranked voting.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think that the citizens are going to want to see a vote by each council member on the election, the appointment of this person to this position. So at the end of the ranked voting, your numbers will go up and then each council member will have to, in turn, vote aye on that, what appears to be the selection from that process.
Yep.
Okay, good. Now, the discussion is also, this is a great opportunity for you to finish discussing what you feel are the best qualifications for this. I know Tracy started on this a moment ago, but does anybody want to weigh in on why they feel, and this is not necessarily to say you like candidate A better than candidate B, but an opportunity for you to address the general your general opinions on what this position in this time requires to be successful. I see. So let's start over again, and in that concept of the discussion, start with Councilmember Blair.
Thank you, Mary. For me, the biggest thing is to attempt to fill the qualities that were left in Cody. And in my opinion, Cody was best at digging really deep into the issues and bringing about things that we didn't think about previously, and bringing to light a lot of details that a lot of us really just didn't think about. And for me, whoever the person is that's going to step in should be someone that also fills that void.
Okay. Councilmember Carmody, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with James. It was a sore loss for council when Cody left. I mean, we're really lucky to have him on Public Works, but his questions were so insightful, and I often found myself thinking, wow, why didn't I think of that, you know? So I'd like to see somebody that, I'd like to see somebody new, somebody that hasn't been on council before. I'd like to see somebody that can maybe possibly think about things in a different way that we don't all normally think about them. So, and I think that we also need to consider some diversity. That's what I have to say about that.
Okay. Chad?
Yeah, I think we all agree that we have an amazing group of candidates that have applied for this. I mean, it's incredible. I'm glad that we have that. In looking over the applications and the thing that stood out to me the most was the civic duties. So there's one or two that I didn't even see anybody list, say a PTO or PTA or whatever parent organization. So volunteerism is pretty big for me. And I do think that as well as experience to get us from previous council experience to get us from today to next November. And then hopefully this same pool of candidates will still be involved, maybe on some committees, and we'll have a great pool of people to draw from then. I mean, it's going to be really hard to agree on one out of the great candidates, but I do lean towards that civic duty, people that have been involved, and that to me is the most important part, because they're already familiar with our system, and it's 18 months that we have a lot of work to get done.
Tracy?
Just to kind of reiterate what I said, I think we have one person that's thrown their hat in the ring and spent some time actually campaigning and running for the position, and we have a bunch of other folks that definitely have a lot of good qualifications, but prior to an opening to just slide into a seat, none of them, from my awareness, have run for any sort of position as well. And I think it would be best for our community and to decide that the way it's traditionally always been done, which is in November, and letting them vote for themselves and having them have an opportunity to get to know these candidates between now and then, and hopefully let the system work as it's supposed to. And once again, I think we have an opportunity here, and that's about all I got for you.
Okay, Councilmember DePino.
Thank you. I think we have a history here at Yelm of appointing candidates or appointing people to the city council that the public doesn't agree with. Time and time again, we've appointed, and this isn't just one or twice, this is multiple times, that we appoint someone on city council and they get unelected by the people. Now, you can say what you want about, the reasons for why someone gets unelected or why someone gets elected, but the point is the people don't agree with our decisions. Simple as that. They vote people out. It happened to Tad, Councilmember Stillwell. He went through the appointment process. He lost to a candidate that had more experience. It was on council. That candidate lost in the election to Councilmember Stillwell. It happened with Mayor Foster when he was first appointed on city council, and he lost the election subsequently. It happens again and again and again. And I guess that's for the council to decide whether experience is necessary or not. We all started somewhere. We all didn't have experience before we got elected, and then we did. So that argument to me, it's not there. No one has the experience until they're in that position. I like, people are dancing around it, but they're talking about EJ Curry, whether or not they wanted her to be back on the council or not. And I think that I respected the heck out of her. I worked well with her on the finance committee, and I always bring back to that because when her, Molly, and I, or Councilmember Carmody and I were on that committee, I thought it was a great committee. I thought we did wonderful things that, we voted differently on city council at times, but I always was able to respect former Councilmember Curry's decisions on there. But one thing that I do appreciate about, or one thing that I would like to see out of the appointed position would be someone that's actually willing to speak on the council. Councilmember Curry, or former Councilmember Curry, she talked a lot during subcommittee meetings, but when it comes down to it in actual council meetings, she rarely spoke too much, and that was a concern of mine. I liked her, and I wish she would have expressed her opinions a lot more, because they weren't always as the whole council voted, and so she had a lot of adverse decisions and thinkings. One of my top choices is David. I think for the Department of Commerce, he brings a wealth of knowledge and new experience and new ideas to this council that, no, he's not an elected official. He doesn't have the experience, but he does have a lot of experience working with local governments, working for grant writing. There's a lot of different candidates that bring different opinions and backgrounds, which I think we need. And I like Councilmember Carmody's suggestion about bringing diversity to the council. I think that is important to bring as well, to represent the people as best they can. I don't think it should be the only consideration, but I think that's one of the considerations. As the only and probably the first Asian American on the city council here in Yelm, I can respect the heck out of that. I do want that. And when Councilmember Curry was on the council, we had 3 women on the council, which I don't think we've ever done before, which was amazing. I appreciated that. So yeah, maybe those considerations do need to be taken into consideration. So it's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Terry?
This is a real hard one. Firstly, I want to thank all the people that stepped forward and applied for the position, because it's not easy. And I encourage, no matter what happens, if you're really interested, try and try again. I think I was elected on my 3rd go round, and I can't help defaulting to the time when I was in the same position. And I had been on the planning commission for 12 years. And I thought for sure I was a shoo-in. I thought, well, geez, you can't beat that. But oh no. And they defaulted to a former previously experienced person just to complete that last year. And as bummed as I was, I did understand why that happened. And looking back on my first year, it's so overwhelming. I mean, there's so much to learn. I barely even thought I was participating. There was that much to learn. So even though there's some very strong candidates, I would probably still not default, but support maybe bringing on EJ again because of her experience and all the things she's done. And also point out, I think she lost to James by 15 votes. So it was a very close race, wasn't it? I could be wrong. I don't know. It was very close. 17-13. But for that reason, given sorry, how many? 30? 30. for that reason and for what she's already brought and served, I would probably lean towards that, but I would say, please, all the other amazing candidates, step up again in the next election.
Okay. Does council want to entertain another round of comments? James?
I'm good.
Molly? Dad? Tracy, Chair? Thumbs up. He's good. Joe?
I just wanted to add that I agree with Councilmember Kaminsky. For those that don't get on this, that don't get the appointment process, don't get appointed here, you should run. And anyone that wants to run, I would absolutely help you get started. And even if it's EJ, if you don't get on, I 100% happy to help you out. And I'm publicly saying that, so let me know, because if you don't get it, I truly do want it. I want new blood on the city council, and I want new voices and opinions. So thanks.
Okay, well, you've had your discussion, and again, the expectation is that this will come forward to council at the next meeting as old business, and we can explore in the meantime using that app perhaps to get that ranked voting in place so that you would help you in this awesome decision. And I look forward to getting whomever in that seat sooner than later so that they can do the business of the city with a full council. Very important to do that. Okay, that brings us to the end of our program. I will ask Mr. Graham if he has any pertinent updates that the council would want to talk about during this study session, or if not, we can move on.
Hang on, I'm just waking up. What was that, Mayor? No, just council. I will send an email out with an update to all of you. I know it's late. There's nothing urgent or pertinent that can't wait for an email from me tomorrow.
Okay. Similarly, my report is simply that we have been engaged as the executive branch and management team in trying to figure out our way through this uncharted maze of funding. And then we've had a couple of other things happen that have been distracting as well. And to that, I just want you to understand that there has been no activity as far as protesting or anything like that in the city of Yelm. However, we are aware that there may be, and we are prepared for that eventuality. And we're supporting the other law enforcement agencies and the other cities in Thurston County should they need our assistance. But we expect that, as always been demonstrated in Yelm, that if people want to voice their opinions on a subject, they're going to be supported in that, protected in doing so, and those different opinions are going to be welcomed here in Yelm. So that's what I can say about that moving forward. And other than that, unless some council member has a question for me about anything, I'll go down the line again, starting with Council Member Blair for any council member initiatives you want to bring forward.
No initiatives. It looks like SWAC has their first meeting since March coming up tomorrow. So I'll have something on that next week.
All right. Councilmember Carmody.
Not much to report here. I have an intercity transit meeting tomorrow where we're going to be discussing picking up service again. Just to let everybody know, we might have some communications from an individual who lives in Nisqually Pines. She has been, requesting the scheduled pickups, and she's been upset that that intercity transit doesn't actually go to her door to pick her up, rather than their normal stop, which is they don't even stop in Nisqually Pines. It's not on their route. But for this period of time, they've been making an exception to where they stop at the office, so that if an individual wants to go to the office, and they will, Intercity Transit will pick them up there, but they will not go to somebody's door to pick them up in the Pines, just to let you guys know.
Molly, but aren't they still doing their ride share thing? Not ride share.
Yeah, it's the scheduled pickup system where if you know that you're going to be going to the doctor on Thursday, you call and set up an appointment. So, or if you work Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, you can set up a recurring ride, but it's just not on the fixed bus system.
Right.
But their route doesn't even include Nisqually Pines, and so they're kind of going out of their way to accommodate people who live there, but they can't go into the community and pick them up at their houses. They're just going to pick people up at the office there. So
Gotcha. Okay, I understand better.
that's it for me.
All righty. Chad?
I have no initiative tonight.
Tracy?
I actually got an email from one of our business owners here in Yelm, Mr. Phillips over at the White Horse, and he wanted us to discuss perhaps loosening the regulations on our special event permits. The way I understand it is he is able to do a beer garden in the backside of his facility there, but it's limited to a 2-week permit. And it sounds like what he's requesting, due to the COVID-19 50% of capacity situation that he has there, that he could expand that to perhaps a 2-month permit.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were in the loop of that conversation. That's already been taken care of, Tracy, under the adoption of the Unified Development Code that the council adopted. That no longer needs a permit. So long as his outside seating meets the ADA requirements and so on and so forth, and the new requirements by the health department for spacing, they can have their beer garden all summer long. And in fact, Chris Vaccaro will be meeting with him tomorrow to double check on all of those ADA requirements and so forth. Looks like he's good to go.
Well, there you go. Sounds like you've already tackled that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Kyle wrote in directly, so I didn't realize that he'd also contacted you, or I would have given you that feedback earlier. But yeah, should be a satisfied customer tomorrow. Okay, that it, Tracy?
Yes, sir. That's all I have.
All right, Councilmember DePino, initiatives.
Thank you, Council. Oh, thank you, Council and Mayor. Kyle reached out to me too, so I was going to follow up, but Tracy, Councilmember Wood, stole the thunder from me. So kudos. I'm glad that you're getting it taken care of. That he doesn't need to do anything, and that the city's going to meet with him. So that's awesome. The only other thing that I was going to talk about was recognizing the athletes that went to state from Yelm, and I've been working with the schools to get this done. And I don't think we're going to be ready by this next city council meeting, but hopefully by the following city council meeting at the end of the month that we will be. So look for that, and I'll work with you, Mayor, to get that situated and all that. And that's all I have.
Okay, Councilmember Kaminsky.
My only initiative was to ask you to help me find some money for the revitalization program. And strangely enough, I had thought of the White Horse as the perfect place to start. It's a cool old Victorian building. So let's get it done in the front and the back. That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Council, thanks for everybody's participation, and thank you, staff. This was one of our smoother run meetings. It's almost going to be sad to go back to in-person meetings since we're getting this dialed in so well. But we have at least one more. And so
I'm going to get this pretty soon. You're going to get to see me and not just a chair.
No, actually, I kind of liked this view of you, Tracy. So I think maybe we'll just keep it like this. So
Thanks.
again, we are available we're available during working hours during the work week for other questions and concerns that the council members might have. I would encourage you all to utilize the systems that we have in place for putting in work orders, for example, or writing into me, or to Michael, if you have something that you'd like to see addressed in town, be it a pothole or a lifted sidewalk panel or trees or whatever it might be, to work through us so that we can get this on the right work schedule, timeline, and so forth. And with that, I guess we're done. All right. So thanks, everybody. We'll